Thanks for plugging in to Rethinking the Dollar. I'm excited to have my guest, Bill Steele, sit down with us to discuss his book, No More National Debt. I'm sure you're going to find this to be very entertaining. Also, click the subscribe button below for more interviews to come. Enjoy this one.
Welcome to Rethinking the Dollar. Today I'm excited to have my guest, Mr. Bill Steele. He's a former newspaper editor as well as publisher. He has written for the USA Today, the Saturday Evening Post, the Los Angeles Times Syndicate, OMNI magazine, and has produced a syndicated radio program called The Health News. He's also the star of his own channel, Bill Steele channel on YouTube, which is a very popular channel where I actually came across his information. And he's also written 22 books and 3 feature-length documentary videos. And today, he's here to sit down with us to discuss his most recent book, No More National Debt. So, Bill, welcome to Rethinking the Dollar.
Oh, thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us. One of the gentlemen from actually a comment from a previous video, the guy said, you have to have Bill Steele on. You have to have Bill Steele on. So I'm like, I'll reach out to him and see, if I can get him on. I would love to, have a chance to sit down and talk to him. So without further ado, some RTD questions. So what comes to mind when you hear the words rethinking the dollar?
Rethinking the dollar.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a question I've never gotten before. There's nothing wrong with the dollar. There's something wrong with Federal Reserve notes, which are money created as an interest-bearing debt. Now, this is as opposed to U.S. notes, which are money simply created by the government without such debt. Thereby, the government reaps a lot of benefits. Number one is something called the seigniorage. Seigniorage means the profit from making the money in the first instance. With U.S. notes, the government creates the money, gets the seigniorage, but also it avoids the control that the debt money system places over the government. And with the Federal Reserve notes, 97% of our money is created as an interest-bearing debt. This blows people's minds to where it goes right over their head right at first, because everybody thinks that the government issues the money. It says United States on the money, and all that.
Yeah.
They just figure the government issues it.
Yeah.
And it's just a deception. It's the way it used to be in colonial America, and back and forth through American history, it's gone back and forth. Old-time economics texts refer to this as the difference between state money and bank money. And state money is the right way to do it, where the government is in control. The government gets the seigniorage. The government does not have itself being controlled by the banks. Bank money is the way that's been getting increasingly popular in the past 100 years, to where now virtually every nation, state, is under this bank money system, where banks get to create all the money as an interest-bearing debt. It just blows people's minds, but that's the case. The only money that's not created by banks for their purposes, for their profit, are the coins in your pocket. Those are still actually created by the United States government.
Yeah.
All other money is created by a bank, which they don't have, but at the moment you go in and you sign your name to that note, to that debt instrument, the banker goes, okay, well, just let me type this entry into the keyboard, and at that instant, they have the right to counterfeit American money.
Right.
They don't have the money. When you go and get a mortgage loan, does the banker, when you sign the final paper, does he go back in the vault and carry out a big Santa Claus bag of $100 bills? No, that never happens. All he does is put little keystrokes in a computer. They make the money up. They have bought Congress off enough, so they have this right. They completely make the money out of nothing, then have the gall to lend it to us at interest, and guess what? If we don't make the payments, they get to take back our collateral as well as get the interest on money they never had in the first place. That's what the deal is.
All right. Now, that answer right there by far is the most detailed, precise answer that I've gotten thus far, so I appreciate you for that one. Now, with everything going on globally as well as here locally, how important is it for Americans to begin understanding the importance of monetary literacy as well as financial literacy? Like, my goal here with Rethinking a Dollar is to give people a monetary background, monetary foundation, to then be able to make better decisions with their finances, personal finances. Is there a distinction between monetary finances or monetary literacy and financial literacy? And how important is it for us to realize either one, or however you would categorize it?
Now, see, I'm an old man.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can only ask one question at a time because I can't remember all those questions.
Okay. So how important? How
just
important?
Ask one question.
Okay. How important is it for today's generation, the millennials, for example, to begin taking an interest in monetary literacy?
Got it. Okay. Stop. Okay, it's important because you notice in the past, or since 2008, the Fed has pumped out an unprecedented amount of new money into the economy, about $4 trillion. This has never happened before. Mm-hmm. And yet, are you like 5 times richer than you were in 2008? No, I don't think so. No, the only people that are 5, 10, 100 times richer are the bankers, the tippy top. That's where all the money went. Mm-hmm. And even then, even though they pumped this unprecedented amount, and the total economy of the United States is $18 trillion, and they've increased it by $4 trillion. It was only $14 trillion before. Mm-hmm. $4 trillion extra dollars. That's a big, like 25% increase, right?
Right.
And still, our economy is just limping along like this. And pretty soon, because of the intricacies of the bond market and all that kind of stuff, the Fed is going to have to start raising interest rates. What does interest rate rise do? It sucks money out of the economy. What do you think is going to happen when you, the average guy out there, suddenly has a 10, 20% decrease in his income? How's your car payment going to go with that? How's your mortgage payment going to go with that? It's not going to be pretty, but that's what's going to happen. Right now, even with this unprecedented increase in money, in the money supply, still the economy is limping along. And pretty soon it's going to turn down, I guarantee you. And you're going to see all of these ridiculous excuses for why it's happening from the financial press, and there's going to be nothing but confusion everywhere. But that's why it is. We finally reached a point of debt saturation, and no amount of increasing money from the Fed, which is debt money, money created as an interest-bearing debt, no amount of extra money for them pumping in is going to fix this, because there's now too much debt. It's an unknowable quantity. We've never hit this point before, but we've now hit it. And that's why you see the economy flat, even with massive amounts of money still in the system. And millennials, they're going to fall for all this false stuff, this cloud of smoke that's going to be thrown in their way as the economy starts to sink. But this is why, because we finally reached debt saturation. We can get out of it so quickly, merely by turning it around, forbidding the banks from creating money anymore. The Israeli system I like the best because it's gradual, like over a 5 or 6 year period, where the first year, instead of 97% of the money bank money, 3% of the money state money, they make it 90%. The banks only get to counterfeit 90% of our money. Gee, right. What a deal. And the state gets to create 10% of the money supply. And then we look at the metrics of the economy and say, yeah, that looks like that improved the economy, okay? Next year, we're going to make it 80-20. Next year, 70-30, 50-50. And we can just test it. At some point, the economy it's going to be a maximal point. You might want to go all the way and say, only the state can create money. That's the ideal situation. Banks should not be allowed to counterfeit the money supply. And millennials have to understand this. This is the very basis of everything wrong with the world economy. And until we fix it, nothing is going to go well. This is nothing but bad outcomes in the future.
Wow, that was very, very sharp and precise there, because my next question was going to be, give me Bill Steele's global state of the economy address. But you did that right in that same question, so I appreciate that.
It sucks.
Yeah, it's not necessarily, it's not good news.
Nothing compared to what's about to happen.
Right.
We're going to go off a cliff, and I don't know what the event's going to be to where they can no longer hold this. I don't know what you want to call it. It's this Rubik's Cube together, which is held together with strings and rubber bands and glue right now. It could be a little thing like Greece, do you know that what happened today? The Greek parliament issued a statement that said all of their debt is something called odious debt. That has an international definition since, I think, the 1920s. And that is when a group of politicians gets in to run a national economy and they run up a whole bunch of debt instead of paying their bills as they go, then a later group can come along and say, you know, those guys were bums. And we don't owe none of that debt. It's called odious debt, and it's recognized under international law. And that's what a new Greek report has just come out with, and the Parliament will undoubtedly go ahead and vote for it. And I listen to Bloomberg every day. Yeah. And the Bloomberg guys are all, oh, well, gee, what's Germany going to do? But they're completely ignoring that, no, Greece is about to say, we don't know any of it. And what's that going to do to the world economy? That might tip it over. Yeah. And if that doesn't tip it over, the Chinese economy is going through a huge bubble right now that cannot continue. That might tip it over. Something's going to tip it over, and the outcome's not going to be good.
Right. Wow.
But you got to understand what the cause of it is.
Right. And that's the thing, like mainstream media doesn't give us any of the real news. And so the whole idea behind Rethinking the Dollar and your channel and other guys and alternative media is to give a different perspective. And so definitely right now, odious debt.
Yeah, you want to know why the news isn't telling us?
Why is that?
I'll tell you why. Because I had a guy who served as the PR rep for my book, No More National Debt. He was just a friend and interested in what I was doing and wanted to help out. Well, he's the president of one of the radio division of one of the three major networks. I'm not going to say which one. Right. But he's a very well-known character in the news business. And when he first saw my film, The Secret of Oz, I sent him a complimentary copy, and I figured I'd never hear back, like I always never hear back from any of these guys. But he got on the horn and said, "This is great." And I went, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, I hate those bastards at JPMorgan." And I knew I was onto a story then. And he explained how JPMorgan controls the three major networks, and it's through debt. They'll go to one network and say, you know, your equipment's looking a little shoddy there. We can loan you like a couple $100 million. You know, you can buy all new stuff and fix it all up and beat the other two networks. And they go, yeah, that's great. Yeah, we'll take that. And then he goes to the other networks and say, you know, that other network, they just borrowed a bunch of money from us. You better get on the stick. And pretty soon, they've got all three of these networks mortgaged out to the max. It's like most Americans are mortgaged on their house, to where they can't even afford to make the interest payments on their loans. They depend entirely on JPMorgan coming in once a year and rolling the loans over. Yeah. To where they have to make no payments. Right. So, no, you're never going to see me on network television.
Now, speaking of which, interest payments. Today, did you have a chance to watch Chairwoman Yellen give her, synopsis of, whether or not they can or cannot raise rates this year? Did you get a chance to see that?
No, I just heard a couple pieces of it. I was at work today, and I just couldn't hear her press conference, but I heard little pieces of it.
Yeah, it seemed, I've over the last year or so tend to listen to a couple of these, speeches, but yeah, they seem to be the same thing, just full of fluff words and not real precise and accurate, just give you some hints here and there. So walked away with it, absolutely knowing absolutely nothing and knowing that they can't raise rates anyway, but I guess it's all show for, entertainment anyway. But let's go, you got something to say?
Well, yeah, there was this very interesting story in the New Yorker about 6 years ago now. I think it was an interview with Bernanke, and the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee was asked, "Why did you ever vote Bernanke in?" And he goes, "Well, because none of us could understand him, so we all figured he knew something." Wow, that was a direct quote.
So those are his credentials, because wow, okay. Interesting.
No, they're supposed to talk in ways that we don't understand. Yeah. That's what they want. They wanted, economics, man. Only the smart guys can understand that. Us peons, we can't understand nothing about that. It's not true. I just told you the truth. Yeah. You know more than most of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. There are bankers who don't know about fractional reserve lending. They don't realize that when they make that loan, they don't actually have the money. They don't realize they're counterfeiting money at that instant. They're just going through the bank, whatever the bank has them do. I've talked to these guys. They really don't understand it. And when they do start to understand it, they go, oh. Yeah. So they've got everybody faked out, and it's a multi-trillion-dollar business per year. So yeah, they can afford a lot of fancy schmancy PR guys to tell them how to keep people confused, and that's what's happening.
Yeah. Wow. Now let's dive into your book a little bit. No More National Debt. I saw originally it was released in 2011, and you made a couple revisions, and now you have the more modernized copy with some electrical gadgets and technology included in it. Well, how'd you get to that book in particular, and why No More National Debt, and how'd you get into writing that book?
Well, it was just my contribution to humanity is that I can boil. I've been on this stuff for so long. I'm a reporter by nature. I just got on this in 1980 and just kept following it. And it took me like 10 or 12 years to figure it out. And now, even every year, I figure something new out about it. And I'm no genius. You can tell that by talking to me for 10 minutes. But I do have a knack for being able to boil it down to the essential things that the average person can latch on to. And so I wanted to synopsize, what is the 1 or 2 sentences that people can take away on understanding what's going on. And not only that, but what do they do about it? Mm-hmm. And so that's no more national debt. We don't need a national debt. All that is selling bonds, mostly to banks, to finance our overspending in Congress. It's great for politicians because they don't have to go and either raise taxes right away because they don't have the money, or cut your services right away because they don't have the money. Yeah. They can just go, we'll just borrow some money. We never pay it back anyway. It doesn't matter. But that's like the Bible says, the borrower is servant to the lender. Mm-hmm. And so when a government is borrowing from a bank, then the government's no longer sovereign because they're beholden to the bank. The bank becomes a sovereign. You have a bankocracy at that point. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've got right now. And that's why you see bankers so rich and the rest of us still going downhill. And it's never going to change. It's not, no matter who gets into Congress, no matter what they say, until we focus on this no more national debt thing. We don't have to have a national debt. That's just a lie. It was promulgated by the Bank of England in 1694. That's what they did when they got the Bank of England Act through. They made it legal for the government to borrow money.
Right.
And that's just not, it's easy for the politicians, it kills the rest of us long term.
Yeah. Now, in your book, there's 36 chapters of a lot of detail and precise things down to the history of money. We had some silver things in there. You had a lot of precious metal things like that. Now, for the millennial generation, the younger generation, what are some of those, out of the 36 chapters, what's 1 or 2 chapters that you can recall offhand that's most important now? I mean, of course, debt. But any practical, any things that millennials can take advantage of right now?
I don't want them to fall for the gold money is the solution thing. That's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Gold isn't the solution. Gold is the problem. Gold is a small quantity of money easily controlled by bankers. That's how I got onto the story in the first place, because I was running a newspaper in Northern Virginia, and some old guy called me up on the phone one day and said, boy, have I got a story for you. There's no gold left in Fort Knox. And I just kind of rolled my eyes like, I got another crazy guy. And so I developed this. When you run a newspaper, you get at least one a week. And they'll talk for hours if you let them. And you don't have that kind of time. Yeah. So I developed this thing. I said, great, send me something in the mail. Click. And I was off the phone in 30 seconds. And, crazy guys never have anything to send. All they have is a theory. 3 days later, big, thick packet of papers comes in the mail from this guy.
Really? He
was not a quack. His name was Ed Durrell. He was a Ohio farm implement manufacturer. He'd made $1 million. He had this 200-acre spread over the mountain from where I live. Beautiful place. He was up in his 80s even then, and he just devoted the rest of his life to chasing this story and trying to get people to listen to him that the gold in Fort Knox was no longer there. And in fact, that was probably the root of Ian Fleming's novel Goldfinger, the James Bond novel.
Mhm.
He changed the end of it, to be more dramatic or whatever. But really, what happened is the gold was gradually sent out of Fort Knox through the Federal Reserve Bank in New York over to London to something called the London Gold Pool, where they were just trying to suppress the price of gold by dumping gold on the market. Well, with a limited, gold does have a limited supply. You knew that wasn't going to work out for too long.
Yeah.
But hey, guess what? The multi-billionaires of this world were able to buy gold at $28 an ounce until it was all gone in 1972.
Yeah.
So gold has always been the money of the rich man. It's never been the money of democracies or freedom. And so gold is not the answer. Gold is not the solution. Gold is the problem. That was be the main thing. The other thing is this whole nonsense about JFK was killed because he was about to kill the Federal Reserve or issue debt-free government-issued money. That's complete bunk. I wanted that to be true when I wrote a book in about 1992, but I spent 3 days in the Library of Congress and finally chased it down, tracked down this executive order. It has nothing to do, Executive Order 11110 has nothing to do with issuing of U.S. notes.
No, but didn't it reference something about silver, coin and silver? I mean, something with silver, correct?
Yeah. Silver had just risen to over $1 an ounce, so they could no longer back $1 with an ounce of silver, and so they were going to have to kill that silver backing for the dollar, and this transferred the authority to reissue silver certificates from the president to the Secretary of Treasury. That was the main intent of that bill. And if there's all kinds of supporting notes. It wasn't a bill, it was an executive order. There's all kinds of supporting notes, and scholarly guys who have looked at it and stuff had nothing to do. Kennedy was an internationalist by nature. He was not the type of guy who wanted to support the sovereign nation state. And if I was telling a millennial something important, I would say, don't buy into this concept. This would be like the second most important thing. Don't buy into the concept that we have to eliminate national boundaries. The nation state is the bulwark of world freedom. And once you eliminate those national boundaries, you might be able to eliminate war, but at the cost of an ironclad world dictatorship. These nations rubbing against each other, that is the very essence of democracy. That's why in the U.S. Congress, I would never be for just one party. Here's an example. For example, this TPP bill they're trying to ram through Congress right now. If it wouldn't have been for Democrats, for God's sakes, I would have thought the Republicans would be against it, but the Democrats saved the day in the end. Bless those Democrats. They might have even done it, most of them, for the wrong reason. It doesn't matter. It's democracy in action, that grinding against each other. And that's the way the American government in the genius of the Founding Fathers was put together. It's called the separation of powers concept, where no one group can get too much power. They're always competing and grinding against each other. And on the international level, what's the separation of powers concept? It's the individual nation state. And so we've got to try to preserve that and be against these giant international, transnational organizations like the European Union, the TPP. There's a one that joins the U.S. into the European Union. They're trying to float through too. If they can get fast track to, that one's right behind TPP. And within a year, we're going to be burdened with about 5 or 6 new of these agreements. And then we're just going to have to try to undo it in future years, and it's going to be difficult.
Right. Now let's get into central banking and central planning. Like in your book, you have a chapter called "Problem Within the Fed." What is that? What is that all about? Because I, usually think, get rid of the Fed, you get rid of a problem. So is there a problem within the Fed, or?
Yeah, I can explain this real easy. If you ended the Fed, let's see, this is the evening. This is Wednesday evening. So Thursday morning, right? That you become king and you go and lock the doors of the Fed all across the country, all 12 Federal Reserve banks and the headquarters in D.C. You lock the doors, say, Fed is done. We're going to turn it into a bird sanctuary from now on. Would banks stop lending money?
No.
No. It's not the Fed. It's the banks. It's fractional reserve lending. Their ability to create money out of nothing. The Fed is just like the curtain in The Wizard of Oz, to make us think that the government's doing something. So the Fed meets today. All economic eyes are on the Fed. What does Queen Yellen say? Doesn't matter what she says. The banks are going to go. It's the actions back in the background.
Yeah. Right. That makes sense. Makes sense. Now let's get into cashless society. What's your thoughts on, all this news about cashless society and, trying to abolish cash and restrict cash usage and things like that? You think that's good for our country or bad?
I think it's bad for the country, but I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. I mean, I just intuitively know that having cash is a good thing.
Yeah.
But, electronic money, we need a mix of monies.
Yeah. Now, what's just another side note, not really a question that I intended on asking, but cryptocurrencies, having alternatives. You said gold is not the answer, but I'm assuming gold, silver, alternatives outside of fiat currency is good, or what would you say?
Well, wait a minute. What is it? What is fiat currency?
Fiat currency is, to my knowledge, government issued, in this case, paper.
See, what you're saying is fiat currency means bad money, money that's not gold backed. That's the implication. That's the way it's become in this day and age. But that's not what it is. All fiat means is issued by government order. But as the gold bugs try to make it like, ooh, fiat currency.
Right. Yeah. I know the distinction between.
To your point. I'm for all kinds of money. Doesn't matter. You can have cryptocurrency. Like, for example, during the Great Depression, how did the average American survive the Great Depression in the 1930s? There were over 3,000 complementary currencies that sprang up in this country. That's why the feds couldn't go after Bitcoin initially, because it was already well established that complementary currencies were illegal in the United States. Or else the Justice Department would have been on Bitcoin, in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But they couldn't. And so, the U.S. has always been the most successful force in this planet for fighting this banker fake out. And we haven't done a very good job because they've almost sealed the deal now. But, you and I are still out there talking about it.
Right.
Do you think they're talking about that in Iran, for example?
No.
Or Russia?
Definitely not. Yeah.
So, it's all relative, but still the U.S. is the place that's provided the most resistance to this problem throughout history. And so, don't give up.
Yeah.
We just can't give up. We gotta, we know something, and therefore it's our responsibility to talk about what we know, whether it looks like we're being effective or not. Because if we don't, then whatever happens as a result falls on our head. And so once you know, you've got the responsibility.
Right. Now let's take it outside of our borders to out east. Now, with all the things happening globally, you got the Ukraine situation, geopolitical events. What's your thoughts on those developing organizations, the AIIB, the BRICS, SEO, Eurasian Trade, all the Silk Road? Do you think that the world reserve status of the dollar is in jeopardy, or has already ended in some form, and just hasn't really hit home or come home to roost yet?
My guess would be no, that it's not in jeopardy. But do I care? No. I mean, this is like one of those side road let's all worry if the dollar is going to be the reserve currency, or will the BRICS make oil? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All that matters is who controls the quantity of money. Will it be democratically controlled by you through your government or not? That's the only question that matters.
Right. Now, if something happens where there's some type of quantitative easing, quantitative forward, they're talking about if rates can't go up type of thing, then continue to increase the money supply in general, causing some type of inflation, hyperinflation. Do you see something like that happening, or what do you think? Because if we're all holding on to paper in our bank accounts and our wallets, and they're printing like it's just nothing, that hurts. And so it would affect us directly, because all that excess paper fighting for the same goods will cause a problem. Or am I wrong?
Yeah, I'm not saying gold and silver aren't good investments, but I just don't want them being used for money.
Right.
Make people think that that's the solution of the problem. It's not the solution of the problem.
Right.
We were on a gold-only currency during the 1930s, during the Depression. Did that do anything for us?
No, not at all.
We were on a gold-only currency during the 1920s when we had, on a percentage basis, the most huge bubble in the stock market in the history of the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
Did gold prevent that? No. And it was a gold-only money supply.
Mm-hmm.
Gold is not the answer. Making people think it's the answer is the problem, because it just diverts huge amounts of people's attention, money. Oh, I'm going to buy them gold coins and stack them up in my safe. And, you know, I've been hearing that gold is going to go to $5,000 since 1972.
Uh-huh.
If I'm not mistaken, today's price is still $1,200.
Yeah.
I mean,
Now,
yeah, it would.
Even in 1972, when the price rose from, well, I mean, I'm not off 25 to 850, whatever. I mean, I'm assuming that surprised you.
Yeah, well, it's a good investment, maybe, you know, but maybe not too. I don't know. I just don't know. Don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, that's real. I understand that. Now, as we come down the home stretch here, winding things down, we know the problems. We know debt's a problem. Now, what are some practical solutions that, you know, millennials can just, starting tomorrow, starting next week? I mean, what type of books can they read? What type of, you know, what can millennials do? Being that, you know, the millennial generation and their children are the ones that will reap the consequences of, you know, the actions taken 20, 30 years ago as everything unfolds nowadays. What would you tell somebody looking for some help or solutions, or where would you point someone?
To this video that you're making tonight. I mean, this is good, because you ask me some really important questions that lots of times people don't ask me. And that's what are the most important things that you think there are to tell the millennial generation. And it's one, that we don't have to have national debt. Banks shouldn't be able to counterfeit money. What were the other importance? The importance of sovereign national status, sovereign nations maintaining that status, and I think maybe there was one other one, but it's just those basic things. And you know, I'd sum it up maybe in two phrases. One is no more national debt, because that tells people that, what, you mean we don't have to have national debt? No, you don't have to have national debt. You can just create money. It's legal. You can do it. It's in the Constitution.
Yeah, I agree. So ultimately, I would also, you know, just education. Education is power, obviously, because the more you know, the better decisions you can make for your own personal situation. And hopefully sharing a message such as the way you do and what I'm trying to do can hopefully make a difference. As you mentioned earlier, contributing to humanity is obviously something that's on your heart. So you've done a great job with that, because you've definitely, you know, here I am talking to you, and you've affected my life. So I appreciate and thank you for what you've done.
Well, I mean, you can really put the solution on one page. And the most important thing is just to figure out what that solution is and stick to it. And every new thing that comes, you know, put that filter against the new thing and say, okay, why doesn't that work?
Right.
And you can figure it out. Anybody can figure this out once they understand what the basic stuff is. And that's, we don't have to have a money supply created as an interest-bearing debt by banks.
Right. Well, Bill Steele, thank you for joining us. How can those who might come across you for the first time find you and get involved with what you're doing and be a blessing to you?
Well, probably the best thing is my YouTube channel, BSteele3. And of course, my website is tied into that, billsteele.com. And, you know, all the rest is history. You can figure it out from there.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bill. Appreciate you sitting down with me. Definitely learned a couple things myself, and it's always good to learn from an expert directly. So hopefully get a chance to rap with you in the future about some more particular issues. But other than that, I thank you for joining us tonight.
Sure. And just remember, you're now the watchman on the wall. Okay, you're it.
Have a good one, man.
This concludes my interview with Bill Steele. I hope you found our discussion to be very informative as well as educational. I want to encourage you to get a copy of his book, No More National Debt. Also, love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this interview. Click the comment button below, leave us a comment, as well as share this video if you found us to be very informative. When you get a chance, visit Rethinking the Dollar for more educational tools, a way to test your IQ, as well as get a copy of my free ebook. Look forward to bringing more videos to you. See ya.